Hey guys, Q&A Tuesday. As usual, thank you again for all your questions. These questions make these episodes possible. I tell you guys this every time, and I'm going to keep telling you this every time because, again, if you guys didn't ask, I wouldn't answer, and there would be no Q&A Tuesday, so thanks again. Now let's dive right into it, and the first question comes from Bonnie Wani, whose questions I've answered before, also a follower that I've had for pretty much since I started this. So Bonnie, thank you for your continuous support. Thank you for sticking around for more than a year now. Hi, Roman. What do you think about people just buying watches to flex? Is it really becoming a norm in today's society? Great episode, by the way. Thank you. Would love for you to include what's on your wrist at the end of your video. Some of them are simply gorgeous. First of all, let me tell you, as a tradition on Q&A Tuesday, I haven't shown what's on my wrist. I don't know why, but I certainly can start doing that. The same, oftentimes I just forget. When I do what's on my desk, then I usually remember to do a wrist shot, where Q&A Tuesdays I just kind of forget towards the end. Sorry. Flex. Well, everybody loves to flex, and everybody has loved to flex since for as long as I can remember. Only issue is, and I discussed this before, is that now we have a way to flex on social media without any immediate repercussion. And I think I've answered this question before in a previous episode, but I do love this question, so I'm going to tell you again what I've said before. If I am a guy that goes out and buys himself a diamond-encrusted watch for $500,000, and I walk into a room full of people that understand what I have on my wrist and so on and so forth, and I say, hey guys, look at this watch. I had a $500,000 diamond piece on my wrist. What do you all think? Isn't that great? The entire room will most likely turn around and look at me like I'm the biggest asshole in the room.
You suck, you jackass.
However, if I do the same thing on social media via Instagram by saying, hey, out here in Miami Beach, take a snapshot of my wrist shot, put it up there, I'm going to get a gazillion likes. Because there's nobody on social media that will immediately in your face tell you, hey, you're an asshole, you're flexing, and you're just showing off. Where in a room full of people, you would never, ever do that. You have the shyest of people out there, the most socially awkward people out there that would never do certain things out in the real world that they can now do on social media. My use of social media when I originally started on Instagram was just that. It was a way for me to flex, but I quickly realized that that's exactly what I was doing, and I kind of stopped. And I made it to what it's supposed to be, and that is I have a product to sell. I'm going to show that product off in a setting of either something I'm doing on my own, in my office, or just a simple wrist shot. And in turn, I'm going to get inquiries on those watches, people asking me how much they are, and that lead to sales, which they do. Social media is a powerful tool in order to be able to sell things. A lot of guys out there, their entire client base is on social media. This is the only platform they have to sell certain products, whether it's watches, sneakers, or whatever it might be. The problem is this, and this is again in your question, is that yes, trends are becoming that of what social media brings forth. So if everybody's out there flexing certain things on social media, others follow suit. And oftentimes, and it's kind of sad, people will actually get into or buy certain things just to flex on social media. I've always, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I've always said that, media controls a lot of the stuff that goes on. Stuff on TV tends to control your opinion one way or the other. I think I've said this before. I don't watch the news. And the reason I don't watch the news is because the news is so biased. Whether it's far left or far right, irrelevant. I'm not going to state an opinion on that. But turn on CNN, and if you have this kind of time, watch CNN for 24 to 48 hours straight. Regardless of what topic they're discussing, regardless of what happened in the world at the very moment. Let's say it's the president, right? If you're someone that knows nothing about politics and doesn't really have a strong opinion about anything, after watching CNN, or any other news network for that matter, I don't mean to single out CNN, you're gonna leave the TV feeling like you're the utmost expert in whatever it is that you just watched, let's say politics. They bring on these panelists, they bring on these area experts, so to speak. Today we're discussing blah, 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 and please meet our panel of experts. Mr. Bob from Arizona, Mr. Tom from Canada, and Mr. Billy Bob from Alaska. These guys are the foremost experts on the issues that we're discussing. 3 young kids come on a panel, one 28-year-old, a 30-year-old, and a 25-year-old. All of a sudden, they're the foremost experts in whatever it is that we're discussing. And my only question always was, well, who the hell are they and who made them experts, right? But nevertheless, you sit there glued to that TV because they make the shows so entertaining that, again, after 24 to 48 hours, you're going to leave feeling as if you're the utmost expert now in the issues that they were discussing at the very moment. And this is what I mean by media influencing us. And that's TV. Social media is even worse because social media is so blunt, so in your face. They don't have to dress it up. They don't have to make it pretty. All it is somebody taking a short video, taking a snapshot, and then that snapshot going viral, and everybody and their mother reposting. All of a sudden, saying, you know what? I need this watch. This is what I need to do. And as you said, after a while, it becomes a norm in our society. Social media has become the norm. If you told somebody 20 years ago that a pretty girl is going to take 20 selfies a day and put it on some platform for the world to see, probably sound pretty crazy to you. But today, that became the norm. I don't take selfies. My daughter, however, I have like 500 selfies in my phone. And when I look through, it's my daughter and me and her every day coming up to me and say, hey, let's take a selfie, let's take a selfie. But I don't post them out on social media, so it's all good.
Let me take a selfie.
Next question comes from Seiko, and this is just sort of a follow-up from a question I answered him about my Grail watch, and I told him it's the Sky Moon Tourbillon with the blue dial. And his question is, thank you for answering my question. You're welcome, Seiko. Great pick for your Grail watch. For limited pieces such as the Sky Moon Tourbillon, what is the process when you do buy one directly from Patek, and how do allocations work? It's actually a really good question. That's why I decided to answer your questions back to back. Well, for one, it's not a limited piece. It's a limited production, not a limited edition. These watches are non-numbers. They're not indeed limited editions. Of course, they make very, very few of them. And what these pieces are called are quote-unquote application pieces. And there's a few of them. It's not just the Sky Moon Tourbillon. Most of the grand complication pieces that Patek makes, the minute repeaters and the tourbillons, are application pieces. And the way the process works is you have to be approved to be able to buy this watch by the Stearns at Patek Philippe. That sounds pretty crazy, right? I want to spend $2 million on a watch and I have to be approved? Well, it's kind of like the process for buying a LaFerrari or the GT3 RS Porsche, which is also quote-unquote an application car. And there's a slew of them out there. With watches, the way it works is that the first thing they're going to check if you're someone that can afford a $2 million Patek. There are plenty of people out there that can drop $2 million on a particular watch, go flip it, make a couple $100,000 and call it a day. I'm one of those people in my business. We can afford to go out there, buy a $2 million watch, sell it for $2.2 million, take the profit and put the money back in. But yet I'm not somebody that can afford to actually keep that watch. On the personal level, and I said this before, I'm not quite there yet, right? So that's the first thing that they check. So if I apply for this particular piece and it's done through an authorized dealer, they're going to check my financials, take a personal financial statement and see, hey, listen, how much money am I worth? If my net worth is $3 million and all of a sudden I'm going out there to buy a $2 million watch, the reason is obvious. I want to buy it to resell it. I'm going to get denied. But before I even get there, it's the local AD that you're normally dealing with that submits the history, or Patek looks at the history of you with Patek Philippe, much like they do with cars. Before you can even think about applying for a LaFerrari, you better have purchased 5 or 6 Ferraris from them in the past. Same goes for Porsches. So they look at my history. What have I bought before? Now, if they see that I bought myself 3, 4, 5 Calatravas at an average price of, let's say, $20,000 or so in the past, and all of a sudden I'm jumping up to a Sky Moon Tourbillon, that will also raise a red flag, and again, in turn, make them look at your financials, make sure that this is something you're doing for the right reasons. Last but not least, who are you? You know, if you're an important person, odds are you don't have to have history of Patek Philippe. If you're some sort of a celebrity, whether it's sports, music, movies, etc., odds are George Clooney's not going to buy a Sky Moon Tourbillon and go and resell it to make a few bucks, right? You sort of don't need to. It's an image thing, and you don't want that getting out there about you anyway. So those are the steps that you actually have to take. So for me to get out there and actually buy a Sky Moon Tourbillon, most likely I will never, ever be able to do it. They know I'm a gray market dealer. Even though I would be buying the watch for myself truly, not to resell it, they will never sell it to me. Plus, I will never have a history of going into an authorized dealer and buying 10 Pateks at a retail price because, I get them much cheaper. I get them discounted and I resell them. Let's say you're somebody who just happened to have gotten into watches and you can afford a $2 million watch because your net worth is $500 million, right? But you have to get past the interview with Stern himself. They fly you out to Switzerland. You have dinner with Stern. You get a tour of the factory and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, it's ultimately up to him whether or not he wants to sell you that watch. So if you don't have any history with Patek, but yet you're convincing enough and passionate enough to tell Mr. Stern, look, I want this watch, and that's it. I won't have it any other way. These are the watches I've owned in the past. Yeah, they're not Patek Philippe, but this is the one that I want, and I can afford it, and I'm not going to resell it. I just want to have that watch because it's the biggest, baddest watch in the world. Odds are he's going to sell it to you. You're going to end up waiting about a year plus to receive your watch, sometimes longer. And voila, lo and behold, that's how you end up with the Patek Sky Moon Tourbillon. Cisco hopes that shines a little light into that process. And by the way, the car processes is very similar with Ferrari and Porsches and so on and so forth. Next question from Hallmark Creates. Now, I've answered their question before as well. Another great video, Roman. Thank you. Question. In your opinion, which watch manufacturer has the best looking hands? second, minute, hour hands. My personal favorites are from Breguet. Easy answer for me because my personal favorite hands are going to be from Breguet as well. I will mention a couple of other brands. Thune probably makes the coolest blued hands. Specifically, you guys saw the collab I did with Steve Halleck. I'll put the info up there about independent watchmakers. Well, he just actually loaded a new video a few days ago, and I'll link it below. You guys can check it out, where he reviewed a Thune, and the hands on that watch are absolutely outstanding. And last but not least, another hand I can tell you about, and this is when I say hand-specific hand, is probably the Rolex Explorer Steve McQueen. The orange hand on the Rolex Steve McQueen is unmistakably just that. It's recognizable. Everybody knows it's a Steve McQueen Rolex. It's just something that pops out right, and for those that know, will know right away. I guess another cool hand I could think of off the top of my head, speaking of Rolex, will be the Milgauss hands. I think those are pretty cool. There's a slew of other watchmakers out there that do make beautiful hands on their watches and beautifully decorated watches. Part of decorating the watch is obviously making beautiful hands.
I always knew you had beautiful hands.
And Breguet indeed does probably the best job out there, not just on the hands, but everything else, whether it's the engraved rotors, whether it's the engraved movements, etc. Blancpain is actually another one that does a beautiful job designing the hands of the watch. And it's a good thing that they do that, because if you think about it, when you look at your watch at a glance, the very first thing that your eye is drawn to is to the hands of the watch. So having beautifully designed hands on a watch, I think, is extremely important. And I know there's a lot of thought process that goes into that when designing a watch from scratch or redesigning an existing watch for any major brand manufacturer, because indeed, that's the first thing that you look at when you look at a watch is the hands, because you're looking at the watch to tell time. It's a good question, thank you. I'm gonna take one more and get out of here. Next question comes from R. Ramirez. Hello, Roman, hello. Question for you for your next Q&A. Have you ever handled or sold a Rolex Zerographe reference 3346? How rare are they? Thank you. No, I have never held or seen in person a 3346 Zerographe. How rare are these watches? Well, this is considered to be holier than the Holy Grail, as they say. A lot of Rolex vintage collectors, if I asked them, what's the Holy Grail for a vintage Rolex collector, they would probably tell me the 4113 split-second chronograph as the Holy Grail. It is known that only 12 of them were made, and I think only 7 or 8 have surfaced in existence as far as I'm concerned. But the Zerographe, I feel like, is the Holy Grail. I guess a little bit about the Zerographe. The 3346 is the first luxury chronograph with an in-house movement. Previous movements were made around the Velours movements, but the Zerographe is actually a first manual wind made by Rolex 17 jewel movement with additional parts added to create a flyback stuff function on the watch. And the way that worked is, as the second hand is moving, once you depress it, it will fly the second hands back to zero. And as long as you hold it, it'll kind of stay there. And then if you let it go, then the chronograph will keep going again. I mean, seems a little bit primitive considering today's split-second chronographs and so on and so forth. But again, this watch was made in 1937, I believe. I mean, it's pretty kick-ass for back in 1937, if you ask me. The first rotating bezel. Doesn't seem, again, today doesn't seem like a big deal, but that was the first reference that had the rotating bezel, which is now iconic. Every Rolex case in point, I'm wearing one right now, a two-tone Datejust, has a rotating bezel. Just about most of them do. This also makes it very iconic. A lot of firsts there, right? So the Zerographe is so old and so rare, there's almost like no mention of it in a lot of the Rolex literatures and so on and so forth. It was more of a concept watch rather than a regular production, because of the limitations of chronographs at the time and people trying to make better chronographs, split-second chronographs and so on and so forth. It was sort of a concept watch. It's said that 12 of them were made. From what I know, there's only 4 to be known in existence. So a couple episodes ago, I answered the question about a Holy Grail watch for me. For modern watches, I'd said it would be the Sky Moon Tourbillon. The 3346 would probably be my Holy Grail in the vintage world. I love vintage Rolexes. I have a bunch of vintage Rolexes. And if I ever had an opportunity to own one of those watches, I'd probably jump to the moon and back. It's a hell of a watch. Well, guys, that's it for me for today. Last but not least, what am I wearing on this Q&A? I'm wearing an old school two-tone sub with the blue bezel and the blue dial. I forget to do these on Q&A, so there you have it. Didn't forget it this time. Thanks for all your questions once again. Don't forget, comment your new questions below in order to keep these episodes going, because they only live because of the questions that you ask. If you're not subscribed to my channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the like and share button. I'll see you guys next Tuesday.